Hi guys, my name is Deb Marnie and I'm from Aussie Maille, and this is our Chain Maille tutorial channel. Hey guys, a big hi, hello, welcome, how are you? Thanks for popping in and seeing me today. It is really great to see you. So today I've got a project demonstration for you. This one has been requested several times. It is the full Persian heart. Alright guys, let's get into it. Okay guys, so I've got some sample pieces of the full Persian hearts made up for you. So coming up here on the side will be the ring sizes that I used for each individual piece. They'll also appear down in the description section that you can find underneath this video. But just to run through them with you, okay, so this one here in my hand is our 14 gauge AWG version. It's 1.6 millimeter diameter wire, and the ring ID I chose to use with this one is 8.5 millimeters. The next one is our 16 gauge version, so that's 1.2 millimeter diameter wire. The ring ID here is 1/4 of an inch or 6.35 millimeters. The next one is our 18 gauge AWG, which is 1 millimeter diameter wire, and the ring ID I used here was 5.25 millimeters. And then finally, our last little one is our 20 gauge AWG version, so 0.8 millimeter diameter wire with a ring ID of 4.25 millimeters. So as you can see, there is a reasonable amount of stiffness in these. I think the nicest ones to hold their shape are the 16 gauge version and the 20 gauge version. I just feel they're a little bit stiffer. They hold their shape a little bit better. Now the aspect ratio for all of these except for the 18 gauge version is 5.5 millimeters, which is about what you would use for a normal full Persian 6-in-1 weave. The aspect ratio on the rings that I chose for the 18 gauge version are actually 5.7, so a little bit larger aspect ratio, so it's a little bit looser, but I found one size down from that was just too tight and it pulled the rings apart. But I will be showing you today how to do this in the 16 gauge version. I'll also be showing you how to do it in 2 colors. So out of all of these sizes that I tested, 16 gauge is the only one that I have a corresponding anodized ring for. So I'll do that today just to show you how you would incorporate color into your heart. Okay, so to start this weave off, you just make a short chain that is 2 rings of AA, 2 rings of BA. So the way I'm going to show you the colors today is the center rings, the rings that form the V. They're going to be the ones that are colored, and the outer rings, the rings that are lying flat, they're going to be our BA rings. So if you want to swap that around, you would obviously start this in the opposite way. But to do it that way, we start with 2 AA rings, 2 BA rings, and we put our twist tie through our anodized rings. So to start this, we flip our BA rings, 1 on each side, bring them all the way against our other rings, and we want to separate out our colored rings on top so that we can expose the silver rings that we flipped back, because we want to put our next rings through that space just there, and those rings are going to be anodized. So take up an anodized ring and take it through that space, close it up and double it up with another anodized ring. Okay, and your work should look like this at this stage. So to turn this into full Persian, because right now it's just looking like Byzantine, we're going to take up a bright aluminium ring, and we want to feed this through our 4 anodized rings. Okay, so there's a couple of ways of doing this. You can put it through the pair of rings that you just added, and then fold your ring down and go through the 2 rings underneath. and do that up. Or alternatively, and I'll show you this on the other side because you obviously have to flip your work over to place another ring on the other side, take up your new ring and feed it through the bottom pair of anodized rings and then continue it up through the top pair of rings and then close your ring. Okay, so we've got 2 sections of full Persian units at the moment. So now we're going to create this split that you see here. And to do that, we need to place 4 more of our coloured rings going through that silver pair between it. Okay, so separate out those colour rings on top, bring your new colour ring in and scoop up the bright aluminium rings that are there. And we want to place a total of 4 of those rings. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so we've got a total of 4 of our coloured rings sitting there in through our bright aluminium rings. So our next step is to take up a bright aluminium ring and feed it through the ring that is down the bottom here, so the ring that was in our previous unit, and then through the 2 rings that we just added there on that side. So it's gone through a total of 3 red rings. So we've got to make this branch first and then this branch over here. So we go through 3 of those red rings, okay, on one side. And we flip our work over and do the same over here, placing our bright aluminium ring through our 3 anodized rings. Okay, so your work should look like this. So separating them out, you can see that we've got the start of a full Persian over here. So I'm just going to concentrate on this for a couple of sections and then we can move on to the other side. So what we do next is take up another anodized ring, and separating out the top pair of anodized rings, we come in and we scoop up the bright aluminium rings. Okay, and we place 2 rings in there. So there's 1 and 2. Okay, so you've got your 2 rings that we just added, and we now want to place our bright aluminium ring. So again, we take up an open BA ring and we scoop up the 2 rings in the previous unit, and then we come in and scoop up our 2 new rings. Okay, flip our work over to the other side and do the same over there. Go through the 2 rings that were in the previous unit, the 2 coloured rings in the previous unit, and the 2 coloured rings above it that we just added. Okay, and you can see we're starting to develop our full Persian. So I'm just going to do another one over there, and then we'll work on the other side. So again, separating that top pair of AA rings, we come in and scoop up the bright aluminium and we double that up. Okay, once we've placed our 2 anodized rings, we take up a bright aluminium ring and we put it through the pair of AA rings that were in our previous unit, and then bring it up and around through the pair of AA rings that we just added. Close it up. Flip it over to the other side and add your bright aluminium ring over there. So again, through the 2 AA rings that are in the previous unit, into the 2 rings above it that you just added. And there you go, you can see we've got 1 branch there of our heart fully started. So we need to do the same over the other side. So over here, if you remember, we're going to grab a bright aluminium ring, and we're going to want this to go through all 3 of these AA rings that are left. So going through all 3 of them, do your ring up. Okay, and we want to do the same on the other side. Okay, so flipping our work over to the other side, we want to place our 2nd ring, and remembering we're going to go through this single ring here that's from the previous unit, and then the 2 rings that we placed so that we could make the split. So making sure I go through the single ring and then coming up and going through that double ring. Now it is squishy in here, you may have to do a little bit manipulating your rings around, but you will be able to get that through if you just have a little bit of patience and slowly move your ring. So then we want to come in and close that ring up. Okay, and then we want to place 2 anodized rings in between the 2 that are already in the unit, okay, making them go through the bright aluminium. So separating out those 2 rings on top, coming in and scooping up the bright aluminium rings underneath, placing 2 rings in that position. Okay, once you've got your 2 rings placed, your 2 anodized rings placed, we want to place our bright aluminium rings. So again, taking up an open ring, going through the 2 colored rings that are down the bottom, bringing your ring up around and going through the 2 colored rings that you just placed. Okay, so your work should look like this. Flipping over to the other side and placing another bright aluminium ring over there. Okay, going through the 2 rings at the bottom, bringing your ring up and going through the pair of rings, colored rings up the top. Okay, so your work should look like this. And so we want to keep building Persian units off our various branches until you've got enough to bring it back around. Okay, so I'll just show you one more Persian unit. So we add a pair of AA rings coming off our bright aluminium rings there in the center, the rings that are laying flat. And then once we've placed those 2 colored rings, we want to place the bright aluminium rings. We do that by going through the pair of aluminium rings that are in the previous unit and bringing our bright aluminium ring up and around to go through pair of colored rings that are above. Close that ring up, flip it over to the other side and do the same on the other side. Okay, so as I said, we want to keep building those Persian units, bringing them up around until we have enough to bring them together. Now, I found about 10 to 11 units after the split. So this is the 16 gauge in the bright aluminium, and you can see here, so we've got the split and then we start on each arm, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 before we start joining them. But some of them I found 11 was too many and that 10 was better. So you can see here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That was the same for the little 20 gauge one. That's also got 10 units. And the 18 gauge one, I found 11 units worked. So it will depend on your rings and your preference. But 10 to 11 is a good spot to aim for. I did have this one also made with 12, which didn't look too bad either. So it's up to you. I'd aim for 10, see what that looks like, and then you can add extra units as you go. So you guys keep adding your full Persian units to both sides until you've got that 10 or 11 units, and I'll meet you back here to show you how we join them up. Okay, so I actually went ahead and finished this to 12 units on each side, because when I did 11 units, it didn't quite come back together without putting these rings up here under a great deal of stress. So I've decided to make this one with the anodized a little bit larger and go 12 units. So the bright aluminium, I used 11 units. Anodized, I used 12. Now the thing with anodized rings is they're not going to be as consistent. Different colors and different different batches often produce different results in the final ring size. So if you're using anodized rings, you may need to fudge around with these sizes. Okay, so once we've gotten it to about the length that we need it to be, I'm then going to add one more additional colored ring in each end. So as you've been doing, just go through, separate the colored rings and scoop up the bright aluminium rings there. Oops, sorry about that. And we're going to add one of those in each arm of our heart. Okay, just like that. So now comes the really tricky bit where we join these arms back up together. So this is a bit fiddly, so my fingers may get in the road, and I apologize in advance for that, but I do have to hold on to the work as I do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and scoop up the pair of colored rings on each end of our arms, and then bring them around so that they go through both of the single rings that we added. Now this is the tricky bit. It may even help at this stage if you've got a twist tie. So I'm going to grab the twist tie that I took off the center, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to twist those two colored rings together so that they stay there, and it's a little bit easier then for us to come in and close our bright aluminium ring. Okay, so get that first one closed like that, and then we want to do the same on the other side. So we grab another bright aluminium ring and we come through and we pick up the first pair of anodized rings there on one end, the next pair on the other end, and then bring our ring back up and go through the two single anodized rings that we added previously. Okay, and then close that up. And then once you've got that in place, you can remove the twist tie. Okay, so your work should look like that at this stage. And we're just going to add one more unit of Persian here on our point. So to go ahead and do that, we're going to grab a colored ring. And as we've been doing before, we separate out that pair of colored rings on top, and we want to come in and scoop up bright aluminium rings that are underneath there. So we've got one placed, and we want to place our second ring through that same path. So we're going in between our anodized rings and scooping up our bright aluminium rings in there. Okay, and then once we've got those two anodized aluminium rings placed, we place our bright aluminium rings, and we do just as we've been doing before. We go through the pair of AA rings that were in the previous unit, and then come up and scoop up those two rings that we just added in the center. Okay. just like that, and do the same on the other side. Scoop up the 2 coloured rings in the previous unit, which in this case is the joining unit, and then come on and go through the coloured rings that were above. Okay, so we've got a fat looking little heart there, and if you're happy with a fat looking little heart, then you can leave it like that. If you though want to give it a little bit more definition, we're going to add a couple of rings down in here. Now I'm going to use bright aluminium rings because that's the colour of the rings that I will be feeding them through, the outside rings. If you've done this the other way and you've got anodized rings laying flat where I've got my bright aluminium rings, then you may want to do this with an anodized ring. Okay, so first off we're just wanting to go through the side rings of the first unit that's above the join. The first 2 units that are above the join, you can see that there. I've just gone through the side rings and I'm now just going to close that up. Okay, and then I'm going to place one more set of ring, or one more joining ring in the units above, just to give a little bit more shape to our heart. Just make sure I've got this one here positioned where I want it to be. Okay. So I've just wriggled that into position, so it's best if you can see here it's sitting underneath these coloured rings here. If you can get them both sitting like that, that's great. And then we need to put our next unit, our next ring through the next set of rings in the unit, okay? So go ahead and do that now. Through that second unit. And then close that ring up. Okay, and there you go, you've got your full Persian heart. Alright then lovelies, that's it. That is the video tutorial today. I hope you enjoyed it and you love your little chainmail hearts. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up here on YouTube. Share the video if you like. While you're here, if you're not a subscriber, you might consider doing that for us. That would be awesome. Check out some of the other videos we've got for you. There's plenty to ruffle around through. And last but not least, guys, don't forget to give our shop link up here in the corner a little bit of love and affection. That's where we sell the bits and bobs and you know what you're going to need to whip up this heart and many of our other projects. Alright guys, thanks once again for popping in and seeing me. It was really good to catch up with you. I hope you're all keeping safe and well, and that I'll see you again sometime in the very near future. Bye.